Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for Assimilate Inc. and I'm back again with another Scratch lesson, and in this tutorial we're talking Scratch and PIX Online. Now I'm going to show you in this lesson how smooth the workflow is to take your dailies from inside of Scratch and send them over to PIX for client review and approval. Alright, so as you can see, we are on the main landing page for Scratch. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. I'm just going to call this project, appropriately enough, PIX. We will create that project. I'm just going to leave everything where it currently is as far as the project paths go. And we're just going to set our default project settings to be 1080p 23976. Now, once we've got all that set up, what I do want to make sure of is, because I know that I'm going to be sending this project through to PIX, we're going to set our apply default output template to be our PIX H264 dailies. Let's say okay, let's enter our project, and we're going to need some media to work with. So let's import our clips. I'm going to head to my Media OneDrive into my dailies folder into PIX. I'm going to select Horror Show, and what we're going to do is to make sure that once we have that folder selected, I'm going to make sure we have select folder and create new timeline selected. Now, once we have that selected, I'm also going to make sure, because this footage is UHD and I'm bringing it into an HD project, I want to make sure I adjust the scaling to fit to the width. Now, once I do that, I'm going to say open, and I'm going to be brought to the clip import options window. We're going to leave the group set to current, which is fine, but we're going to create new timelines based on the subfolders, which are called Day 1, Day 2, Day 3, which is a great way to keep yourself organized when going through the whole process from Scratch to PIX. So once we have this set up, I'm going to come down and I'm going to say OK. You'll see that what Scratch has done is it's given me two new timelines in our current group, which we can call if we want to. Let's just rename this. I'm going to come down to Edit. We'll call this group PIX Output. And I'm just going to delete this timeline that we do not need. So you'll see here are all of our clips. I can come in. We can take a look at all of them. I'm just going to hit the space bar here. You'll see that we do have audio. I can also come back here to our edit panel. Let's come to our audio just to make sure that we do have it. Perfect. They are all sunk up with the shots already. And we're ready now to get through and to export this for PIX. Now, obviously, we're doing a truncated version of the whole process of taking the footage from its original folders to outputting for the purposes of showing you how the export to PIX is going to work. Now remember, back when we created our project, I set that output template to be a PIX H264 output. I'm going to come over to render, and you're going to notice that we have an output tree that gives us two output paths for each one of our timelines. Now don't worry about that green, because if we were to come back to that timeline, that's actually the film burn that's happening between each one of the shots. So let's head back to card 1. So what exactly is going on here? Well, if you take a look, we've got some burn-in happening. Then we're reframing to both 720p and 1080p, adding a watermark, and then creating the H264 file. Now, why are we outputting two trees for PIX? Well, let me hide out of Scratch just for 1 second here. And what I've done is, on the desktop, I've taken a snapshot from the actual PIX website detailing the clip format that you're going to want to export from whatever system you're working on, obviously in our case Scratch, to upload to PIX. Now you'll remember that we have two output branches going, one in 720p, one in 1080p. Well, one represents the standard output, and the other represents the screening room output. Now for what we're doing, we only want the standard output. We're not going to do a screening room output. So what I'm going to do is just Command or Alt and Tab back into Scratch, and I'm just going to remove this tree from both of our output nodes. Now you'll see that we've got our burn-in. Our burn-in will have, let's take a look here, perfect. We've got the clip name. We can actually come through and see exactly what's happening here. So we have our source file name. We have the source's name, we have the source's time code, the audio file if there was one, which there isn't in this case, the sound roll again, which there isn't, and last but certainly not least, we have the audio time code. Now I'm going to leave all of these set exactly the way that they are, because the one that I really want to get in and adjust is the watermark. You'll see it says property of Assimilate Inc. But for this lesson, this footage comes to us courtesy of CineStudy. a fantastic resource for free footage for you to work with. And you can even download it and follow along in this project if you would like. So what we're going to do is we're just going to paste in that this footage is property of CineStudy. We'll even give a big shout out to their website here. Very nice. But what's important to remember is that what we do for one branch of our output tree, we want to do for the other one, which is attached to card 1. Let's come to the watermark. Again, I'm going to paste that information in here. There we go. Perfect. Let's come back to our render module. Now what we'd like to do is to set this up so that it exports in a logical hierarchy on our desktop in this case. Now obviously you're going to export to wherever you have available space. Because this is not too big of an output, I'm going to send it to the desktop. So let's come to our output, our H.264 output here, and we're going to set the output location right here, our output format more specifically. And what I want to do is I want to leave the source's name, and I'm going to take everything else out from here. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this PIX, and then I'm going to give this a slash, and we're going to call this basically what the name of the timeline is. So we're going to call this hashtag timeline. Now as I do that and I type in timeline, you'll notice that that information immediately gets updated right here. So what's going to happen now is that when this timeline is output, it's going to go into a folder called PIX, into a folder called card 1, and then each shot is going to be exported individually. I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it, and we're just going to come to card 2, and we want to basically have the same output hierarchy going. So what's going to happen is that inside of that main PIX folder, a new folder called card 2 will be created, and then all the shots will be put into there. All right, so I'm now going to say OK. I would browse to send all of these files to the desktop like such. I'll say select, and then we'll come back to our other output. And we would do the exact same thing here, going to the desktop. You'll see that I have the desktop in my bookmarks here. And what I would now do is simply take each one of the cards and add them to my render queue. Once in the render queue, you'll see there they both are. I can now simply start that render queue, and all those files will be exported. So what I'm going to do is just pause right now for the export. We'll come back in a second, and I'll show you the file hierarchy on my desktop. Alright, so our export is done. You'll see that I do have a folder on my desktop called PIX. Inside of that, I have my 2 cards. Now this could be called day 1, day 2, depending on when these cards were shot. But as you will now see, we'll just pick one of the shots here. We have our dailies all set to go with the information we need burnt in onto the screen. And we're now ready to upload this into PIX. I'm just going to close that window. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to log into any website right now. What I'm going to do is just navigate right down to the bottom, and I'm going to launch the PIX application. Now, as you see, I am on a Mac, but don't worry. What I'm going to do is just Command or Alt and tab into Firefox, and I'm logged into my PIX account here. And as you can see, PIX is available pretty much anywhere that you could think that you might need to use it. You'll see you have PIX for Mac OS Catalina, the brand new operating system, as well as legacy versions of OS. We also have it available for Windows. We also have it available for the web, iOS, and even TV OS. So really, anywhere where you could want to take a look at dailies or access your PIX account, you're going to be able to do it. So let me just hide out of Firefox. Let's come down. Let's launch the PIX application. Once it comes up, I'm just going to log in as me. And as you can see, I'm prompted for what project I would like to enter. We're just going to choose my Scratch to PIX Web Dailies project. I'm simply going to say choose. And right now I'm sitting in a folder called Dailies Unreleased, which is perfectly fine. I'm good uploading to this folder. Now, I don't need to go file, upload. I don't need to do anything like that. I don't need to create any folder hierarchies. All I need to do is to simply take that folder from my desktop and drag it into the PIX interface. Now, as soon as I do, I'm brought to the Upload Settings window where I can choose where I'm going to upload to. I can even add clip tags as well as folder tags from here. But I'm not going to do that right now because I want to show you where I can actually access that after the fact if I want to. All I'm going to do is simply say upload. Now, one thing that's great about PIX, because it does have very specific upload requirements, which we obviously took care of inside of Scratch, you can actually verify that as you're uploading the clips into PIX. It will actually tell you if any of the clips don't meet the PIX specifications and whether you want to stop what you're doing or continue uploading. All right, let's let our footage finish uploading into PIX. We'll be back in 1 second to show you the interface. All right, as you can see, we are back. Our uploads are finished. We have our PIX folder inside of the application. And one thing that I do want to mention is that the first thing you will notice once your dailies are uploaded into PIX is that you'll receive an email that will look a little something like this. Now, I just saved a PDF out of Gmail, but basically it's going to list off all the files that were uploaded and whether they were successful or not into PIX. And the great part is that at any point, these are actually all links that you can simply click on to head into PIX to check out any one of the dailies clips you might want to see. All right, now inside of the application, you will remember that I did mention that we didn't necessarily have to add tags right off the bat. What we have the ability to do is to show the info of any folder or clip for that matter, and we can come in and add tags directly in this window if we want, or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename this folder Horror Show, which we're just going to call the name of our new dailies project. All right. Now, once that's done, all I now need to do once I've made that change is to simply close that window. And what PIX will do is once we hit home here to head back, you'll see it has now been updated to Horror Show and we're now set to get in. I'm just going to double click on that folder. We'll double click on card 1 and we're ready to check out any one of these dailies. Let's simply double click on the first one here. We'll give PIX a second to load it up. You'll see it's all queued up. We can see it and hear it. And what I want to do is I'm just going to pause our playback for 1 second because I want to draw your attention to the fact that you will notice that the time code on this clip is 1 hour, 1 minute, 30 seconds, which is exactly represented in the time code inside of PIX. So PIX got in, read the time codes of the clips, and it's represented down here in the lower right-hand corner of the interface. Now, in most cases, depending on your workflow, you might be ready to take this and send it out to a client. I just want to take things one little step further and just show you how we have the ability to get in and to mark up any one of these clips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate right down here to the bottom center of the interface, and I'm going to activate the Notes window. Once I do, we now have the ability to get in and to take different shapes, whether it's a freehand shape, square, circle, or even an arrow, and draw it on the screen for us to mark up. Maybe we need to tell the editor that something is not supposed to be in a shot, or there's a problem, maybe there's a boom mic dangling in the shot. And this is how we have the ability to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the freehand tool. I'm just going to draw an arrow towards this box here and say, what's the deal with this box? All right, and once we've done that, we can now simply save this. It will now be attached to the video. I'm just going to step back a little bit in the playback. You'll see now not only do we have the notes window over here that shows not only who actually made the note, but we can actually see where it's tagged in our timeline by the mark right there. Now, what I also want to point out, and if you were paying attention earlier, you may have caught it. If I head back to card 1, if you take a look in the upper left-hand corner of the thumbnail, I'll just zoom in here just so it's a little bit easier to see, you can actually see that there is a little sticky note icon that represents that notes have been attached to each one of these shots. Now you'll see now we got some audio playback here. I'm just going to pause this. I can actually double click on that note to jump down to exactly where it has been added, much like a locator or a marker, and I can see exactly what the note says. We can't show this stand in the shot, so I know that this is something that will either have to be removed after the fact or we will have to choose a different shot. Now, we've got this in PIX. How do we now take these daily files and share them with somebody else? Well, let me show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to card 1, and I'm going to select all of the shots inside of this card. I'm going to right click, and what we're going to do is we're going to add to a playlist. Now you'll see that I already have a couple playlists here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a new playlist. And I'm going to call this Kevin's Playlist Day 1. And I'm just going to call this Best Playlist So Far. You'll see that we have all of the shots in here ready to go. And what we're going to do is we're going to send this playlist. I'm going to say save. And once I do, I'll now be brought to the send window. And I'm going to send this to myself, Kevin McAuliffe. You'll notice that as I started to type my name in, my name appeared there. Perfect. You'll see the subject is called My Playlist Day 1. And I'm just going to type in, hey Kev, check this out. Okay. And it's from me. I'm now going to simply say send. Once the email has been sent off, what you're going to see is something that's going to look a little bit like this. And as you can see, it's just a basic email that has a link to, of course, the best playlist so far. All right, now one last thing that I do want to show you in this lesson is what we have the ability to do. This is now on the client end with the notes that we've attached to these shots. And I'll just choose this shot here. I'm simply going to select it. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say show info. Because when I showed the info screen before, you'll notice down at the bottom we have the ability to get it and check out details, notes, activity, links, attributes, and permissions. But for us, the most important one is the Notes tab. Why? Well, because I've added notes to this shot, and remember, the timecode directly references the timecode from the original dailies. So if I come here to export notes, you'll see that I can get in and export either selected notes or all notes, and I have the ability to not only export them as text files or PIX XML files, but also as Final Cut Pro XMLs or Avid marker lists for me to directly import them into my editing system so that I can see all of the client in my timeline. All right, so I hope this lesson has shown you how well Scratch and PIX works together and how smooth the workflow is once you get all your dailies into Scratch to get the client or the offline house the information they need as quickly as possible. All right, that brings us to the end of our lesson. Now, I want to remind you we were working in Scratch 9.1, and if you need more information about this release, you can check out the link you see on the screen right now, and don't worry, we've included it in the notes below this tutorial so you can get there lightning fast. And don't forget, for everything Scratch and Assimilate related, you can check us out on the web at www.assimilateinc.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.